Hi, my name is Leo and I'm a boat builder and a sailor, and I'm on a mission to sail tally-ho back from the Pacific Ocean to the UK to race once again in the Fastnet race 100 years after she won it in 1927. But right now we're in Helsinki in front of the Music Centre, which is where I'm going to be speaking at the Classic Yacht Symposium about the tally-ho project and also about storytelling. Some of the stories that inspired me and kept me going through rough times, and some of the principles that I think make a good story.
Welcome back. Our next speaker is up, Leo Goulden. So, for the handful of people who have never heard of Leo Goulden, today is the day that you will realize what you have missed all these years. So back in 2017, Leo started to document the work on a boat called Tally Ho. And he continued to post it bi-weekly videos, which by now have more than, well, literally tens of millions of views. He had found a global following of more than 500,000 subscribers, and that actually allowed him to bring the boat back to the shape that she was when she was first built. And in return, Leo gave that same community something to look forward to. And I think the best way to summarize it is a few years ago, I got a call from our friend James Robinson Taylor. He's a photographer, and he sort of his words really summed it up. He says, "You know, Johnny, this world around us is in war and at turmoil, and it's a great big mess. But you know, this Saturday, Leo is going to post a new episode, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy and forget all my worries." So, I think with that, Leo, the floor is yours. There you go.
Thanks, John. Hello. You can all hear me? Great. Thank you for such a lovely introduction, John, and thank you everyone for having me here. It's a real honor to be here, to be invited to speak to you all, and the presentations so far have just been wonderful as well, so really great stories. So I have to make a quick technical note. Is there any chance I can get the presenter's notes on the screen here? In my body clock, it's about 4 in the morning right now, so hopefully I don't fall asleep on stage. Is that going to be possible up there? No? Okay. All right, well, who knows what could happen. I'm going to have to try and remember what I can. Okay, so my name is Leo. I'm a boat builder and a sailor. And I'm going to tell you a story today in 2 parts. The first part of the story is going to be a quick overview of the project I've been working on for 7 of the last 8 years. And the second half of the story is going to be about storytelling itself, and about some of the stories that inspired me and helped me through this project, and about how, in preparing for this talk, it was almost only 2 words long, thanks to John. So in 2017, I purchased Tally Ho. She's a 1910 gaff cutter designed by Albert Strange, and she's got a pretty interesting history. She won the Fastnet race in 1927, mostly by virtue of being the slowest of 2 boats, because she won on corrected time, and all the other boats, apart from 2, retired. There were very, very strong winds and bad conditions in that race, so to me, the fact that she finished at all, although it may not say much about her speed, it says a lot about her seaworthiness, and for me, in the sort of sailing I'm interested in, that's more important. Later on in life, in the 50s, she cruised around the Atlantic with a young family on board, and I just love this photo of one of the girls on deck. And I actually met this woman when she was in her 80s, and she gave me these photos. It's pretty cool. Later on in the 1960s, she was nearly lost completely. This was on a reef in the South Pacific, and after being running around there, she was almost high and dry. She got towed off. She lost her rig, as you can see, and her rudder, and later her interior was completely gutted when she was repaired on a remote Pacific island. She then spent a few decades sort of making her way around the Pacific as a fishing vessel, before eventually being abandoned basically on the west coast of the USA, which is where I found her. And this is more or less what she looked like when I found her. It's just a part of the interior. And when I bought the boat, I didn't have much really in the way of resources. I didn't have much money, but I did have a bit of experience building and sailing wooden boats. I had a lot of experience making foolish decisions, which this was one of them. But I noticed that in my life, a lot of the best things that happened to me started with a foolish decision. That's not to say they all worked out well, but the ones that did took me to some of the most interesting and unusual places. And purchasing the rotten hulk of a 30-ton yacht took me to the northwest corner of the USA, where a family friend had offered me some space in their back garden, where they had a workshop to take the project on. And when the boat arrived at their property and dwarfed their house, squeezed into the back garden, I worried if this kind couple knew what they'd signed up for. But actually, they did know. They knew better than me, in fact, because they had predicted I would be there for 6 years. In my foolish optimism at the time, I thought the project would take me 2 years. And actually, it became a bit of a running joke, because anytime anyone asked me how long it would be until launch, I would always say 2 years. And I said that right up to the very end of the project. So technically speaking, Tally-Ho was launched 2 years ahead of schedule. You can all use that one in your own boat projects, with permission. So having bought the boat and moved her to her new home, my main concern was funding for the project. So I didn't have really a plan, I didn't have a great deal of money, but I'd sort of stumbled across the idea of making videos online and trying to raise money through social media. And so when I started the first jobs on the boat, which included building a shed over the top and building a loft to live in the workshop, taking off the ballast keel, I edited some short videos and posted them online. And a few people started watching them, and they mostly told me I was completely crazy. But they did, after a few videos, see that I was at least determined, if nothing else. And that was the point where people started offering their help in various ways. It was also around this time that I realized the project was going to be much more substantial than I thought. I had hoped to save the centerline of the boat and a lot of the planking, but as I exposed the keel timber, I realized that if I wanted to have confidence in the vessel for big sailing, I would have to replace the whole centerline. So after a worried look at my bank account balance, I purchased 2 of the biggest Purple Heart timbers I'd ever seen, and set about cutting a 6-foot-long scarf to join them together into a piece long enough for Tally-Ho's keel. This was the first constructive woodwork I did on the boat, and it was also the first bit of boat building I'd done for several years, because I'd been sailing, so I was a little bit nervous, but it went well, and the scale of the woodworking in this video, I think, attracted a lot of new people to the YouTube channel, which was good. From that point on, the entire project was funded through the videos that I posted online, and mostly that was donations. Every 2 weeks, I would spend sometimes up to 30 or 40 hours editing a video, showing the progress I'd made, and release it online for free. And gradually, more and more people started watching them, and if people were so inclined, they could donate towards the costs. It was, as far as I was concerned, a symbiotic relationship, and I was glad I never had to ask people directly for money, but I did ask sometimes for specific help in certain ways, such as finding a forklift to borrow. Over the next couple of years, I started getting volunteers, and some would come for a day or two, some would come for longer, a matter of weeks. This is one of the biggest groups of volunteers we had. And this was for a frame-raising party. None of these people had any sort of boat building experience, but they came from all over the world to stay with me for 2 weeks in the workshop, and we built all these frames in a kind of production line over a few weeks. And as you can see, a lot of the volunteers we had were real characters, and they brought their interesting personalities and their stories, and they all became a part of the Tally-Ho story as well. So gradually, over several years, and with a lot of help, we replaced the structural timbers of the boat, starting with the centerline, and then the frames and stringers, beam shelves, deck structure, and so on. And the work was punctuated by trips to mill timber and to visit other boat builders and various other things, and they all added to the story as well. One of the most interesting trips was to the deep south of the United States to mill the framing stock for Tally-Ho, which was made of southern live oak, which is incredibly dense, hard timber that grows in really awkward shapes. So ideal for boat building and pretty much terrible for anything else. And that's why this is the only guy in the world that mills this stuff. And he was an amazing character, Steve Cross. And here he's adjusting his homemade sawmill, which is made of parts of 3 forklifts and God knows what else. That was a good trip. Later on in the project, we were thrown out of the county where we'd been doing the project after a dispute with a neighbor who, for some reason, didn't appreciate the noise of our power tools. The truck driver who had first delivered Tally-Ho as a rotten hulk to the property had been watching the videos, and he came out of retirement to move Tally-Ho one last time. And he must have had more faith in our workmanship, I think, than I did, because as he drove the 20 miles or so to Tally-Ho's new home over some pretty big hills, he was just flooring it. And it was a pretty interesting experience to be following this boat, my life's work, in my car, and just seeing it kind of bounce wildly down the road. By this point in the project, though, the reach of the videos had grown, and the funding had grown too. So I was actually able to start hiring other shipwrights to work alongside me, which made a big difference, helped speed things up. And later on, I was able to start hiring marine electricians and riggers and so on for more specialty tasks. And I found myself working with a really, really great group of passionate and skilled people. Some of them were highly experienced, and some of them had actually started with me as volunteers, but just through the work and the project had gained enough experience and skill to turn professional, which was a really gratifying part of the project, seeing that. The deck was laid thanks to some beautiful Alaskan yellow cedar from our friend John. And at this point in the project, with more people helping and more professionals involved, things were moving more quickly and progress was being made on the rig and the interior. And it was a really great time to see things speeding up, but it was also a very challenging time for me in a way, because I found myself doing so much project management, so much design, purchasing, emailing, fundraising, and of course, editing videos that I barely had enough time to do the woodworking, which was what I got into this for. So that continued to be a challenge, which I never really figured out. I just ended up sort of working some pretty long hours to get bits of woodworking in. But I did manage to continue woodworking until the end. Eventually, 7 years after I first saw Tally-Ho, we relaunched the boat in Port Townsend. And of course, after a project that sometimes seemed like it would be never ending, and it was certainly all-consuming, it was an amazing feeling to see Tally-Ho floating for the whole team. The project overall had been far more successful than I could have really dreamed of or imagined at the beginning. As John said, over 500,000 people watched, and tens of thousands chipped in to support it. And we were able to rebuild the boat to a standard that I hadn't expected at all. In the end, we replaced almost every part of the boat, but there were a few little bits remaining. Most of the transom was original teak with a lot of graving pieces in it. The big anchor capstan on the foredeck is original, and the main sheet jibe buffer or horse is original as well. And the lead in the keel, we did rearrange its atoms a little bit, but it's the same lead, so I think it counts. So by that metric, Tally-Ho is actually 20% original by weight. We also reused a lot of the planking timber in the interior. The saloon table is all original planking and various other things. Now, shortly after launching the boat, we started our sea trials in Port Townsend, and that was a really, really incredible feeling. I think more amazing for me than actually launching the boat was getting the sails up and feeling the hull heel over for the first time in decades and decades, and the culmination of so many years of work. So that was unforgettable. And pretty shortly after that, after just a few sail trials really, and a couple of months or less after launching, we set out on a pretty ambitious shakedown cruise. We went 1,500 miles from the northwest corner of the USA up to the remote islands of Haida Gwaii in northern British Columbia and back down. And it was just an incredible trip. Here's a couple of the crew enjoying our first foray out into the open ocean there. And one of the highlights of the trip was the west coast of Haida Gwaii. This is a very remote, exposed lee shore. It's completely uninhabited, and sailing the boat there felt like a true test for the boat and the crew. We had some big seas there, big weather, but the boat and the crew handled it beautifully. And I've been very impressed with how the boat sails, which is lucky. It would suck if I didn't like the boat. This is one of the few sheltered anchorages on the west coast of Haida Gwaii, and there's Tally-Ho at the bottom of the picture there. And this anchorage is uncharted. There's no soundings. There's no one living on this whole coastline. There's no way of getting there by land. And being here just with with my partner and close friends and crew was just a very magical place to be. After we got back from our trip over the winter, my partner and I have been overwintering in southern British Columbia and sailing and enjoying the quiet winter cruising. And I did, a couple of weeks ago, manage to single-hand tally-ho for the first time, which was a very satisfying experience coming from a sort of single-handing background. I have to say, flying the drone at the same time did add to the challenge. So that brings us about up to date with the project. And so I'm going to embark on the next part of this talk, which I hope doesn't get too metaphysical. But when I first started talking to John about doing this talk, he asked me to answer a specific question. He asked me to try and explain why the audience had been so captivated by this project. Why is it that people have felt emotionally invested enough to donate their time and money to it? Now, I don't think I'm actually the right person to answer that question, because I don't really know the answer. But my first thought when he mentioned it was that it was just a mix of a lot of luck and determination. It's a sort of sheer foolish determination on my part. But I realized those two words, luck and determination, wouldn't fill 20 minutes. So I decided to think a bit more about it. Now, we all know that there are many projects in the world that are really worthwhile projects to support, and there are many beautiful boats being built, being rebuilt, being maintained, restored, and sailed with great care and attention by very passionate people. But it is true that some of these projects struggle to tell their story in a way that connects with the world outside of our own classic boat world. And often they struggle to get funding as well if there's not a benefactor owner involved. So, if there is any knowledge that I can pass on about how this project worked, then I feel I have a duty to do so, because I think more people building, maintaining, sailing classic yachts is a good thing, as we all do, I'm sure. In fact, I would go further and say that it's a desperately needed thing, and not just for the boats, but actually for people. I think that the practical skills, the problem solving, the self-reliance, and the risk that is involved in building and sailing these vessels can give a really great personal satisfaction, perspective, and community. And those are all things which people are finding harder and harder to find in the world, I think. So anything we can do to spread the word and bring more people into this sort of work, I think, is valuable. Now, I can't tell you definitively what it is that made the Tally-Ho project work, but there are some elements, I think, that I can identify which help the story work. Certainly, the history of the boat is important, and the location where the project happened. But I think more important is the characters, and I was very lucky to meet a lot of really amazing, fascinating characters who were part of the project. And I think that telling the stories in a character-based way really helped the audience sort of identify with the story. I can tell you that doing this project was not easy. It was certainly one of the hardest things I've ever done, and there were times when I felt I'd made a terrible mistake and wanted to quit. There's one other element of storytelling that I'd like to discuss, and it's a little harder to explain, but it is something that inspired me hugely and inspired me taking on this project and how I tried to tell the story. Some time ago, I realized that the sailing books that I'd read, sailing books of the last couple of centuries really, had really inspired me and influenced my perspective on the world. This boat may be familiar to some people. Books like A World of My Own by Sir Robin, and many others. These classic books tell of heroic achievements against amazing odds. The most amazing thing about them, though, to me, is that they're often told with humility and humor. And it's those elements, humility and humor, in the face of adversity, which to me make them so much more inspiring and impressive. Going to sea for an extended period, whether on your own or with a crew, as many of you know, gives one an amazing perspective. It can be very, very humbling, and it can be humorous as well, I think, when you're really out there and you get a sense of the scale of your tiny vessel in the colossal ocean. It puts everything into perspective in the bigger picture, and all of our sort of normal daily worries seem a little bit ridiculous when you're out there, and funny in a way, in the best possible way. I first got a sense of that perspective, I think, when I was reading the books that I'm talking about, the classic sailing books of the last couple of centuries. And when I was reading them, I was working in this boatyard in Bristol. It's since burnt down, it's very sad. But I was doing my apprenticeship and just starting to learn. I hadn't been to sea much, but the books gave me the dream of adventure. And several years later, they inspired me to buy my own first wooden boat, and that was a folk boat that I bought in disrepair. And on sailing it, I immediately snapped the mast. It was the first thing I did. And then, having rebuilt the boat, I finally set off on my own sort of adventure. I sailed the boat to Ireland and then down the coast of Europe and to West Africa and across the Caribbean, and spent a bit of time there. Amazing boat. This one didn't have an engine or GPS, but had a very good sculling oar that could maneuver it quite well with, and I sort of fumbled my way through astronavigation with a lot of trial and error, mostly error, I would say. But covering thousands of miles alone on this boat gave me a little taste of the perspectives, the experiences that I'd read about in these books. And when I started writing myself, I tried to channel those elements, and I tried to write with that in mind, that humor and humility and perspective that you get when you're in the middle of the ocean on your own. And when I moved to, many years later, to video storytelling, I think I continued to be inspired by those stories and tried to consciously or unconsciously bring elements of that to my work. Now, boat building, I think, is not that different from sailing in many ways. It takes great determination and patience, and if you are able to look at the bigger picture and get a broad perspective, they're both kind of ridiculous activities in the best possible way. So I do sometimes wonder if this style of storytelling somehow was something that came through in my work and was something that helped people be engaged with the project. But whether it was or not, whether that came through or not, those perspectives, those elements that bigger picture was definitely what helped me personally through the project. In the times when I was really struggling and I wanted to give up, seeing the bigger picture helped me get through and stick to it. I think that in a world where risk has become highly managed, I think there's an urgent need and a keen appetite for stories about people taking risks and taking their lives into their own hands. And if possible, doing so with humor and perspective. So, in conclusion, I don't think I can really take credit for the success of this project. I've been guided by the great storytellers of the past and supported by the generous audience of the present, and I'm incredibly grateful to all of them. I'm also incredibly grateful to all the people who actually physically helped me work on Tally-Ho, and there are many of them. Throughout this project, I've found a great deal of kindness and generosity, and I think those are the real reasons why this project was actually a success, and maybe the only 2 words I needed after all. All I did was take a risk and stick to it with a foolish determination. The Tally-Ho story and the YouTube videos will continue. The challenge now is to sail the boat back to the UK in time for the 2027 Fastnet race, which will be 100 years after she won. And I don't think we have a very good chance of winning it this time. But I do think that history might repeat itself in some ways. I think Tally-Ho will probably be at the back of the fleet, but she'll have a very good story to tell. Thank you. Thank you, Rudy.
Well done.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. You can probably tell that I'm not that comfortable speaking in front of a live audience, but I am trying to get better. Now we're back in the UK, catching up with friends and family, but Helsinki and the Classic Yacht Symposium was really wonderful. It was a great event. We were very well looked after and met a lot of interesting people, and the other presentations were also really inspiring. Those presentations will be available to watch online, so I'll leave links in the video description and the comments. I recommend you check them out. And I did interview a couple of the other speakers while we were in Helsinki, so I'm hoping to get those edited and released on this channel as well. I think they'll be really interesting. Very soon now, we'll be heading back to Canada, back to Tally-Ho. Got some good adventures planned and got some really good videos in the pipeline. But for now, thanks a lot for watching, and a massive, massive thank you to everyone who has donated or otherwise supported this project. It does make a huge difference. It means we're able to keep on maintaining the boat, keep on sailing the boat, and keep on making these videos. So I really, really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.